They call him a fool. The field is cratered. Smoke rises in black columns. Every takeoff is a death sentence. And he suggests the aircraft should roll backward first. His commanding officer stares at him in silence. The engineers shake their heads. But the math, he insists, is sound. The question is not whether it will work. The question is whether anyone will let him prove it. Summer, 1943. The Royal Air Force Station at Manston, Kent, just across the channel from occupied France. Close enough to hear the distant thrum of enemy bombers on clear nights. Close enough that German fighters reach the coast in minutes. Manston is not a strategic fortress. It is an emergency strip. A last resort. Pilots call it the aircraft carrier on land. Planes land here when they are too damaged, too low on fuel, or too desperate to make it anywhere else. The runway is short. The margin for error is non-existent. And lately, the Luftwaffe has learned where it is. The airfield sits flat against the chalk cliffs. Wind rolls in from the North Sea, cold and unrelenting. Ground crews work in layers of wool and grease-stained overalls. Their breath fogs in the morning light. Hurricanes and Spitfires dot the grass, some intact, others stripped for parts. Repair crews work through the night. Welders throw sparks under canvas tarps. Fuel trucks idle beside revetments. Everything smells of petrol, burnt oil, and damp earth. There is a rhythm to it. Engines cough to life at dawn. Pilots climb into cramped cockpits. Ground crew wave them forward. Tires bounce over uneven turf. And then the roar, the acceleration, the moment when metal defies gravity. But the rhythm is breaking. German bombers have begun targeting Manston directly, not with precision, with volume. They carpet the field in high explosive and incendiary clusters. Craters pock the runway like lunar scars, some 10 feet deep. Others fill with rainwater overnight and freeze. Repair crews shovel gravel and lay metal matting, but the damage comes faster than the fixes. Takeoffs become obstacle courses. Pilots must swerve around debris. They must judge distance and speed with no room for hesitation. Some make it, some do not. Wreckage piles up along the perimeter. Twisted aluminum, shattered propellers. Names crossed off the duty roster. And then there are the ones who survive the bombing, but cannot leave. Planes too damaged to fly out. Planes awaiting parts that will not arrive for days. Planes that landed with one wheel shot away, sitting lopsided on the grass, waiting for a mechanic's miracle. The problem is not just the craters, it is time. The longer a plane sits on the ground, the more likely it will be destroyed in the next raid. The Luftwaffe returns like clockwork. Dawn, dusk, sometimes midday when the clouds are low. Air raid sirens wail. Ground crews sprint for the shelters. Pilots still in their cockpits brace for the concussion. Bombs scream down. The earth shakes. And when the dust clears, there are fewer planes than before. Wing Commander Hugh Verity walks the perimeter at dusk. He is a stocky man, methodical, with the kind of calm that comes from too many near misses. He surveys the craters, the bent landing gear, the burn marks on the tarmac. He knows the numbers. Manston is losing more aircraft on the ground than in the air. That is unacceptable. But what can be done? Concrete runways take weeks to repair. Fighter cover is stretched thin. There are no reinforcements coming. The station operates on improvisation and stubbornness. And now, as Verity stands in the fading light, one of his junior officers approaches. Flight Lieutenant Peter Townsend. Young, sharp, and carrying a notebook filled with diagrams that make no immediate sense. Townsend has been watching the takeoffs. He has been timing them, measuring distances, calculating vectors. He has noticed something. The longest, most vulnerable phase of takeoff is the roll, the moment when the plane is moving fast, but not yet flying, exposed, committed. If a bomb falls during that window, there is no escape. The pilot cannot stop, cannot swerve, cannot lift off early without stalling. So, Townsend asks a question. What if the plane could begin its roll from a different position? What if, instead of starting at the far end of the runway, it started closer to the operational strip, but facing the wrong way? What if it rolled backward first, turned, and then launched forward in a shorter, faster burst? Verity listens. He does not interrupt. Townsend explains that a rearward roll, assisted by gravity or a slight decline, could position the aircraft in a pre-compressed state, the engine already roaring, the control surfaces already set, the pilot already aligned. When the plane pivots and begins the forward roll, it would be moving faster, sooner. The takeoff distance would shrink. The exposure time would drop. The math, Townsend insists, supports it. Verity nods slowly. Then he tells Townsend to write it up, formally, because if this idea is wrong, it will kill someone. And if it is right, it might save dozens. If you want more such stories, like and subscribe so these lives aren't forgotten. Peter Townsend did not set out to reinvent aviation doctrine. He grew up in Rangoon, the son of a colonial civil servant. Humid air, monsoon rains, the hum of ceiling fans in whitewashed rooms. He was a quiet boy, more interested in how things worked than in social rituals. He took apart clocks. He sketched mechanical systems. He read engineering manuals for pleasure. When his family returned to England, he attended Haileybury, a boarding school known for producing officers and administrators. He was neither rebellious nor conformist. He was observant. He watched. He measured. He tested assumptions. And when he joined the Royal Air Force in 1933, it was not out of romantic notions of aerial chivalry. It was because flying was a problem worth solving. By 1940, Townsend was a fighter pilot. He flew Hurricanes during the Battle of Britain. He engaged Messerschmitts over the Thames estuary. He learned to calculate deflection angles in his head while pulling 6 Gs. He learned that survival was not about courage. It was about geometry, about knowing when to turn, when to dive, when to break off. He was good at it, not flashy, not reckless, just precise. He shot down several enemy aircraft. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. But what impressed his peers was not his kill count. It was his habit of returning from missions with detailed observations. Wind patterns, engine performance at altitude, the way sunlight refracted through canopy glass and obscured vision at certain angles. He treated every flight as a field study. In 1943, Townsend was assigned to Manston. It was not a glamorous post. It was a repair depot, a refuge, a place where damaged aircraft limped home to dock or be reborn. He did not complain. He watched. He saw the bottleneck, the craters, the delayed launches, the pilots who waited too long and paid for it. He saw the ground crews working themselves to exhaustion, filling holes that would be blown open again the next day. And he saw the fear, not panic, just the quiet, corrosive knowledge that luck was finite, that every takeoff could be the last, and that no one seemed to have a plan beyond endurance. So he began sketching, not artistically, functionally. He drew the runway from above. He marked crater positions. He calculated taxi distances. He noted wind direction, surface friction, and the turning radius of a Spitfire at low speed. He timed takeoffs with a stopwatch. He measured the seconds between engine start and wheels up. He found that the average takeoff roll consumed between 12 and 15 seconds. In those seconds, the plane was a sitting target. If the roll could be shortened by even 3 seconds, the probability of survival during a raid increased significantly. But how? He considered assisted launches, catapults, like those on aircraft carriers. But Manston had no such infrastructure. He considered prepositioning aircraft on slopes, using gravity to aid acceleration. But the field was flat. He considered lighter fuel loads, but that would limit combat range. And then he thought about direction. Every takeoff began the same way. The plane faced forward. The pilot advanced the throttle, the plane rolled forward. But what if it did not have to start that way? What if the plane could begin in a state of potential energy, already aligned, already calibrated, and then released in a shorter, more explosive burst? The idea seemed absurd. Aircraft do not roll backward. They are not designed for it. The tail wheel, the propeller wash, the torque, all of it assumes forward motion. But Townsend was not interested in what was conventional. He was interested in what was possible. He ran the numbers. A rearward taxi of 20 yards, followed by a pivot and immediate forward acceleration, could reduce the total takeoff distance by nearly a third. It would require precision. It would require practice. But it was feasible, theoretically. He took his diagrams to Verity. He explained the concept. He anticipated skepticism. What he got was cautious interest. Verity told him to test it quietly, unofficially. And if it worked, they would talk again. The problem Manston faced was not unique, but it was acute. Across Britain, airfields dealt with bomb damage. Across Europe, runways were cratered, patched, and cratered again. But most stations had length. They had multiple runways, taxiways, and dispersal areas. Manston had one strip, and it was short. Originally designed as an emergency landing site, it was never meant to handle sustained operations, yet by 1943 it was doing exactly that. Damaged bombers diverted there, fighters refueled there, reconnaissance planes launched from there under cover of darkness. The tempo was relentless. And the Luftwaffe knew it. German intelligence had identified Manston as a high-value nuisance. It was close to the coast. It supported channel patrols. It facilitated rescue operations. Destroying it would create a gap in British defensive coverage, so the attacks intensified. Dornier bombers came in low, releasing their payloads in tight clusters. The bombs were not precision-guided. They did not need to be. The goal was not to hit a specific hangar. It was to render the runway unusable. And it worked. Craters appeared faster than they could be filled. Engineers laid steel matting over the holes, but the matting buckled under the weight of landing aircraft. Planes skidded. Landing gear collapsed. Pilots aborted landings and diverted to other fields, burning fuel they could not spare. Station commanders pleaded for concrete, for more engineers, for heavier air cover, but resources were finite. The war was everywhere. Manston was a single point on a vast map of contested ground. It would have to make do. And so the personnel adapted. Ground crews became experts in field repair. They welded by moonlight. They scavenged parts from wrecks. They learned to patch a fuel line with insulation tape and prayer. Pilots learned to land on half a runway. They learned to judge distance by eye, to feel the stall in their bones, to trust their instincts over their instruments. It was impressive, but it was not sustainable. The real danger was not the bombs themselves. It was the window of vulnerability they created. A plane on the ground during a raid had 3 options: take off immediately, seek cover, or burn. Takeoff was preferable, but it required time. Time to start the engine, time to taxi into position, time to accelerate down a cratered strip while the sky above filled with flak and falling metal. Many pilots tried. Some made it. Others were caught mid-roll, unable to lift off, unable to stop, dying in the worst possible way, committed to motion, but denied escape. Verity knew the statistics. He reviewed the after-action reports. He read the casualty lists. And he understood that morale was eroding. Not visibly. The crews were professional. They did their jobs. But there was a heaviness in the air, a fatigue that sleep did not cure. Men stopped joking. They stopped planning past the next mission. That was the silent alarm. When soldiers stop thinking about tomorrow, they stop fighting smart. They become fatalists, and fatalism is contagious. Verity needed a solution, not a symbolic one, a functional one, something that would give his people a tangible advantage, something they could believe in. Townsend's idea was risky, but risk was relative. What was riskier? Trying something unconventional or continuing to lose planes and pilots to a problem everyone acknowledged but no one solved? Verity authorized a trial. Not a public one, not a formal demonstration, just a quiet test. Townsend would take a Spitfire. He would attempt a reverse taxi, pivot, and short roll takeoff. No observers, no documentation. If it failed, they would bury the idea. If it succeeded, they would consider refining it. Townsend agreed. He selected a plane. He walked the field. He chose his line. And then he waited for the right conditions. Calm wind, dry ground, and enough daylight to see the craters. The morning is cold. Frost coats the grass. The sun is a pale disk behind low clouds. Townsend walks the strip alone. He counts paces. He marks a mental map. He identifies the pivot point, a patch of compacted gravel 30 yards from the nearest crater. He will start there. Engine facing away from the operational runway, tail toward the takeoff path. It feels wrong. Every instinct, every hour of training tells him that planes face forward. But instinct is not infallible. Instinct is learned, and what is learned can be unlearned. He climbs into the cockpit. The Spitfire smells of oil and worn leather. The canopy is scratched. The instrument panel is familiar. Altimeter, airspeed indicator, fuel gauge. He does not need them yet. He starts the engine. The Merlin roars to life. The whole airframe shudders. He lets it warm. He adjusts the throttle. He checks the rudder pedals. Everything responds. Good. He releases the brake. He taps the left rudder. The plane begins to roll backward, slowly. The tail wheel chatters over uneven ground. He steers with gentle pressure. The rearward motion feels alien. He resists the urge to overcorrect. He counts seconds. 5, 10, 15. He reaches the mark. He brakes. The plane stops. He takes a breath. Now the pivot. He applies right rudder and asymmetric throttle. The nose swings. The plane rotates on its axis. 30 degrees, 60, 90. He straightens out. The nose now points down the operational strip. He can see the far end. Clear. No obstacles. He does not pause. He advances the throttle fully. The engine screams. The plane surges forward. The acceleration is immediate, sharper than usual. He is already moving when the wheels bite into the gravel. The tail lifts. The airspeed climbs. 40 knots, 50, 60. He pulls back on the stick. The nose rises. The wheels leave the ground. He is airborne. Total time from pivot to wheels up, 8 seconds. Half the usual roll. He banks gently and circles the field. Below, a single ground crew member watches. Townsend does not wave. He lands. He taxis back. He shuts down the engine. And he walks directly to Verity's office. Verity listens to the report. He asks questions. Could it be replicated? Yes. Could it be taught? Probably. Could it be done under stress in the dark with bombs falling? That, Townsend admits, is unknown. Verity considers. He does not smile. He does not congratulate. He tells Townsend to do it again, tomorrow and the day after. He wants consistency. He wants data. He wants proof that this is not a fluke. Townsend agrees. He runs the test 6 more times over the next week. Different weather, different aircraft, different starting positions. The results hold. The reverse taxi, pivot, and short roll takeoff reduces exposure time by an average of 4 to 6 seconds. It works. But word spreads. Other pilots hear about it. Some are curious, others are dismissive. One calls it a circus trick. Another says it violates basic airmanship. A third asks what happens if the tail wheel catches on debris during the rearward roll. Townsend does not argue. He offers to demonstrate. 3 pilots accept. He walks them through the geometry. He shows them the marks on the ground. He explains the throttle control, the rudder timing, the weight distribution. Then he lets them try. The first pilot botches the pivot and has to start over. The second completes it but hesitates before advancing the throttle. The third executes it cleanly. When he lands, he says nothing, but his expression has changed. Doubt has become consideration. Verity calls a meeting. He gathers the senior flight officers. He presents the data. He does not frame it as revolutionary. He frames it as practical, a tool, an option, not a replacement for standard procedure, but an alternative when time is critical. He asks for volunteers to integrate it into their training rotations. 2 squadron leaders agree. Others remain silent. That is enough. Verity authorizes limited implementation. Pilots who want to learn the technique can. Those who do not are not forced. But the option is now official, and when the next raid comes, that option will matter. 3 weeks later, the Luftwaffe returns. It is early morning. The sun has not yet cleared the horizon. The air is still. A thin mist clings to the field. Ground crews are servicing a pair of Hurricanes near the eastern revetment. Pilots gather in the operations hut, drinking tea from chipped mugs. The mood is calm, routine. Then the sirens wail. Everyone freezes, not in panic, in recognition. They know the sound, they know what it means. The ground crews drop their tools and sprint for the shelters. The pilots abandon their tea and run for their aircraft. There is no time to think, only to move. Flight Officer James Harlow reaches his Spitfire first. He is 23, lean, quick hands. He has flown 32 combat missions. He has practiced Townsend's reverse takeoff technique 4 times. He did not believe in it at first, but he learned it anyway because survival is not about belief. It is about preparation. He vaults into the cockpit. He does not strap in fully. No time. He hits the starter. The engine coughs, catches, roars. He scans the sky. Nothing yet, but the sound is coming. A low, distant drone. Multiple engines. He knows that sound. Dorniers. Maybe Heinkel's. Close. He does not taxi forward. He taps the rudder and rolls backward. 15 yards. 20. He brakes. He pivots. The nose swings, aligns. He shoves the throttle to full. The Spitfire leaps forward. The tail lifts instantly. He is at 50 knots in 3 seconds. 60, 70. He pulls back. The wheels leave the ground just as the first bombs detonate. The explosions ripple across the southern edge of the field. Geysers of earth and smoke. Shrapnel screams through the air. Harlow climbs hard. His hands are steady. His breathing is controlled. He does not look back. He focuses on altitude, on distance, on getting clear. 2 more Spitfires follow. Both use the reverse technique. Both are airborne within seconds of each other. A 4th pilot attempts a conventional takeoff from the far end of the strip. He makes it halfway down the roll when a bomb strikes 30 yards to his left. The concussion flips the plane onto its side. The fuel tank ruptures. Fire blooms. Ground crews will find the wreckage later, twisted and unrecognizable. But Harlow and the others are already at 2,000 feet. They form up. They scan for the bombers. The Dorniers are turning east, heading back toward France. Harlow does not pursue. His orders are to defend the field, not chase. He circles. He watches. The raid lasts 4 minutes. When it ends, 3 aircraft are destroyed on the ground. But 3 escape. 3 that would not have, under the old method. Verity reviews the incident report. He notes the times. He notes the survivors. He does not need a statistician to tell him what happened. The reverse takeoff worked. Not in a test, not in theory. In combat, under fire, when it mattered. He calls Townsend into his office. He tells him the technique is no longer optional. It is now standard procedure for all pilots stationed at Manston. Townsend nods. He does not celebrate. He knows this is not a victory. It is a reprieve. The raids will continue. The craters will multiply. But now, at least, there is a counter. A way to fight back against time itself. Word reaches other stations. RAF Hawkinga, RAF Lympne, RAF Biggin Hill. All of them face similar problems. All of them operate on short, damaged runways. Requests come in. Can Townsend visit? Can he demonstrate the technique? Can he train their pilots? Verity agrees. Townsend spends the next 2 months traveling between airfields. He teaches. He refines. He listens to feedback. Some pilots adapt quickly. Others struggle with the pivot timing. A few refuse outright, calling it reckless. Townsend does not argue. He shows them the data. He shows them the survival rates. And he lets them decide. Most decide in favor. By autumn, the reverse takeoff is in use across 6 RAF stations in southeast England. It is not a miracle. It does not stop the bombing. But it reduces casualties. It buys seconds. And in war, seconds are the currency of survival. Engineers begin marking optimal starting positions on runways. Ground crews paint guidelines. Pilots practice the maneuver until it becomes muscle memory. It is no longer Townsend's idea. It is doctrine. Anonymous. Integrated. Forgotten as an innovation because it has become normal. That is how the best ideas survive, not by being celebrated, by being absorbed. The measurable impact is recorded in after-action reports, casualty logs, and operational summaries. Between June and December 1943, RAF stations employing the reverse takeoff technique report a 14% reduction in aircraft lost during ground attacks. 14% does not sound dramatic, but it represents dozens of planes, hundreds of pilots, thousands of sorties that would not have been flown. The technique does not eliminate the danger. It mitigates it. That is enough. Pilots interviewed after the war recalled the method with a mixture of respect and indifference. It was just something you did, like checking your six, like conserving ammunition. One former squadron leader writes in his memoir that the reverse takeoff felt wrong for exactly 3 attempts. After that, it felt essential. Another pilot, in a letter to his family, describes it as a clever bit of geometry that probably saved my life, though I'll never know for certain. That uncertainty is characteristic. War does not offer controlled experiments. You cannot rerun history and compare outcomes. You can only measure what happened and infer what might have been. Ground crews appreciated it. Fewer wrecks to clear, fewer bodies to recover. One mechanic, in an oral history recorded decades later, remembers the first time he saw a pilot execute the maneuver under fire. He thought the man had lost his mind. Then he saw the plane lift off while bombs were still falling. He realized it was not madness, it was precision. He said it changed the way he thought about fear. Fear, he realized, was not the absence of danger. It was the absence of options. The reverse takeoff gave them an option, and that made all the difference. The technique also influenced post-war aviation thinking. Military engineers studying short-field operations revisited Townsend's approach. They incorporated elements of it into carrier launch procedures. They applied the logic to helicopter operations, where takeoff speed and exposure time are similarly critical. The principle, reduce time in the vulnerable phase by optimizing pre-launch positioning, became foundational in tactical aviation. It is taught in modified form at flight schools today. Few instructors know its origin. Fewer still know Townsend's name, but the logic endures. Historians examining the air war over Britain often focus on the big battles, the radar networks, the Spitfire versus the Messerschmitt, the strategic bombing campaigns. Those stories are important, but they obscure the smaller innovations, the incremental improvements, the quiet acts of problem-solving that aggregated, tilted the balance. Townsend's reverse takeoff was one of those. It did not win the war, but it helped people survive the war. And survival, sustained over time, is its own form of victory. Peter Townsend remained in the Royal Air Force until 1956. He flew in multiple theaters. He earned further decorations. He became a group captain. But he did not speak often about the reverse takeoff. When asked, he described it as common sense, a response to a specific problem. He deflected credit. He emphasized that others refined it, tested it, and made it work. That was his nature. He was not interested in fame. He was interested in function, in solving problems, in doing what needed to be done. After leaving the service, he became a public figure for reasons unrelated to his wartime service. His personal life intersected with the British royal family. Tabloids followed him. Journalists asked him about romance, not aircraft. He tolerated it. But those who knew him well understood that his proudest moments were not public. They were technical. Moments when a calculation proved correct, when a risk paid off, when logic, applied under pressure, saved lives. He died in 1995. His obituaries mentioned his service, his decorations, his later controversies. Few mentioned the reverse takeoff. It had been absorbed into history, uncredited, routine. That would not have bothered him. He did not invent it for recognition. He invented it because planes were burning and pilots were dying, and something had to be tried. So he tried it, and it worked. That was enough. The lesson of his story is not about genius. It is about attention, about noticing what others overlook, about asking whether the way things are done is the only way they can be done. The airfield at Manston is gone now, converted to civilian use. The craters are filled. The scars are smoothed over. But the principle remains. When the rules do not fit the reality, when doctrine becomes a cage, when survival demands something new, someone must step forward, not with arrogance, not with rebellion, but with curiosity, with precision, with the quiet confidence that logic, tested and refined, can reshape what seems inevitable. Townsend did not wait for permission to think differently. He did not wait for a crisis to force innovation. He saw a problem, he solved it, and in doing so, he gave others the time they needed to stay alive. That is not a dramatic legacy. It is a quiet one. But in war, quiet acts are often the most enduring. They do not echo in speeches. They echo in the lives that continue, in the missions flown, in the families who welcomed someone home. There is a photograph of Townsend taken in 1944. He is standing beside a Spitfire, hands in his pockets, squinting into the sun. He looks unremarkable. Just another pilot, just another officer. But the aircraft behind him tells a different story. It is scorched, patched, battle-worn, and it is still flying. Because someone, somewhere, decided that tradition was not sacred. That the way things had always been done was not the only way. And that sometimes survival depends not on strength, but on the willingness to think backward, pivot, and launch into the unknown with nothing but math and nerve to guide you. That is the hidden genius, not the invention, the audacity to try it, and the humility to let it work without claiming the sky.